Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into some pretty eye-opening research that shows how a totally new kind of war is already being fought, completely in the shadows.
So, when you picture a war in the 21st century, what comes to mind? Probably not what you've seen in old movies, right? The truth is, the modern battlefield is changing so fast it's hard to keep up. And the rules? Well, they're being rewritten as we speak.
The short answer? It's faster. It's way more automated, and, increasingly, it's being run by artificial intelligence. And no, this isn't some sci-fi movie plot. This is the new reality of how global conflicts are starting to look.
Okay, so let's really get into this. The research we're looking at makes it super clear that putting AI into military tech isn't just another upgrade, like getting a faster jet or a bigger bomb. It's a massive, fundamental shift in how wars are fought, how critical decisions get made, and how entire strategies are built from the ground up.
A huge piece of this puzzle is the rise of what are officially called autonomous weapons, or, as most people call them, killer robots. Now, the key thing to understand here is that these aren't just fancy drones. These are systems that can actually make the decision to identify a target and open fire without a human being giving that final go order. And that, right there, changes absolutely everything.
To really see how this is all playing out in the real world, we're going to look at a fascinating case study, the rivalry between Iran and Israel. Because their current digital showdown didn't just pop up overnight. It actually has these deep historical roots that are, well, surprisingly cooperative.
I mean, just look at this history. It's a complete 180. Back in the 60s and 70s, and you might not believe this, Iran and Israel were actually secret partners. Iran was a major oil supplier, and Israel provided them with military tech. But then, the 1979 Islamic Revolution completely flipped the script. Iran's new government became fiercely anti-Israel. Now, fast forward to the 2010s, and that rivalry has gone digital, fought with code, algorithms, and AI.
And that brings us right to the digital battlefield. This is where AI stops being a theoretical idea and becomes a very real, very powerful weapon. So let's take a look at how both of these nations are using this new technology.
What's really crucial to see here is that they're playing two totally different games. Israel is leaning hard into its technological advantage, right? They're using really sophisticated AI for things like predictive targeting and next-gen drones. Iran, on the other hand, is focused on what's called asymmetric capabilities. Basically, they're developing clever, cost-effective ways to fight back. Think powerful cyber warfare and AI-powered proxy networks, all designed to counter Israel's high-tech edge.
One of the biggest turning points was Stuxnet, back in 2010. This was a true watershed moment. It was a joint U.S.-Israeli cyber weapon that managed to get inside Iran's main nuclear facility. And it didn't just steal information, it secretly took control of the equipment and made the centrifuges spin so fast they literally tore themselves apart. Stuxnet proved to the world that a piece of code could cause real-world physical destruction, and it lit a fire under Iran to seriously upgrade its cyber defenses.
And oh boy, did they upgrade. A decade later, Iran launched its own incredibly sophisticated attack. The move was so significant that Israel's own cyber defense director called it the start of a new era in cyber warfare. Why? Because the targets were no longer just military. They were civilian.
This back and forth really shows you just how scary this new battlefield is. In April 2020, hackers from Iran tried to poison Israeli water supplies by messing with the chlorine levels. Now, thankfully, the attack was stopped, but it crossed a huge red line. Israel's response was almost immediate. A cyber attack that brought a major Iranian port to a standstill. And since then, this shadow war has just kept escalating, targeting military, health, and financial infrastructure on both sides.
So why does this one conflict, happening halfway around the world, matter to all of us? Well, because it's a preview of a completely new kind of arms race, and this one has very, very different rules than the old nuclear standoffs we're used to hearing about.
See, the Cold War arms race was mostly a two-player game between superpowers, but the AI arms race? It's wide open. Because the tech is relatively cheap and the software is easy to get, it's not just superpowers who can play. The danger of these weapons spreading to smaller countries and even to non-state groups is incredibly high.
And that opens up a whole Pandora's box of global risks. We're talking about a totally unregulated AI arms race heating up between nations, new and terrifying vulnerabilities in things we all rely on, like power grids and water systems, the spread of those killer robots we talked about, and maybe even new threats to the fragile nuclear balance that has kept the peace for decades.
All of this leads us to the unwritten future of warfare. Because beyond all the tech and the strategy,
There are some deep, profound ethical questions that, honestly, we are just barely beginning to ask, let alone answer.
And this might be the biggest question of all. When an autonomous weapon makes a mistake, and it will, and kills an innocent person, who is to blame? Is it the person who wrote the code, the commander who decided to deploy the machine, or does the blame just disappear into the machine itself? There's this huge, gaping accountability gap.
It really reveals the two faces of AI and war, doesn't it? On one hand, you have the promise, greater precision, better efficiency, and maybe, just maybe, the ability to keep human soldiers out of harm's way. But then you have the peril, which is just as real, a massive risk of wars escalating in unpredictable ways, that ethical void we just mentioned, the potential for even more collateral damage, and just a deep, profound uncertainty about the future.
Which leaves us all with one final and I think critical question. As our weapons and our ways of fighting get smarter and faster than ever before, can we, as humans, actually manage to stay in control? That's the challenge of this new era. Thanks for tuning in.